Good evening, and welcome to Doc Moore's collection of horror stories. Tonight's chilling episodes, nightmares come alive and shadows dance in the corners of your mind. Join Doc Moore as he guides you through terrifying stories from listeners that will leave you shocked and frightened. Here's your host, Dr. Moore. Good evening. I'm Stephen B. Doc Moore Sr. For the next 15 minutes, we will explore tales of the supernatural, ghosts, and evil spirits, and other worldly occurrences. Please click the subscribe button so I can continue to bring you stories that frighten and shock you. I'm bringing these stories based on the interviews, first-hand accounts from people just like you who've experienced paranormal events. Let's get to our first story. Now, this first interview story comes from Frederica from Ludwigsburg, Germany. I called the interview The Seance Ghost. We moved from my home in Augsburg in 1987. Everything was fine. The moving company delivered our furniture. Everything was back to normal for my husband, my 2 kids, and myself. It was great, but the neighbors wouldn't come to visit us in our home. We invited our old friends, and they came. We had a rousing housewarming party. The party went through the day and into the evening. We noticed a few of the neighbors that were standing outside. They left rather quickly when it started getting dark. My friend said they wanted to leave before it got dark. They said before things started happening. So my close friend, Kathy, that was my girlfriend for a long time, said to me a good way to see if there's something about my house was affecting the neighbors was simply to have a seance. My other friends agreed. We went into the living room and sat around our big table. We lit a candle and set it in the middle of the table and cut off the lights. Kathy said, everybody hold hands, keep holding hands. Do not break the circle no matter what happens. Kathy began to call out in the dark. Kathy asked who was there. We thought we heard a whisper like someone was answering. Kathy asked, did you live in the house? The voice began to moan and cry and answered yes. Kathy said, did you die in the house? The voice moaned and screamed, yes, I died in this house. Kathy said, where in the house did you die? The voice screamed, I died in the living room where we're sitting. And then the table started to shake and rattle. Kathy told us, don't break the circle. She asked the voice, what happened to you? Silence. What happened to you? Kathy asked. How did you die? The voice screamed, I was murdered. We broke the circle. We barely stayed in that room. The table shook with the sounds. Someone kept running up and down the stairs. It was loud. Sounds of moaning, screaming, and crying came from the kitchen, the hallway, and the dining room where we were sitting. We were freaking out. Kathy said to the voice in the room, who killed you? The voice replied, you did. We jumped from the table and ran into each other. We ran out the front door. We turned and looked where Kathy was sitting. She was on her feet, but she could not speak. Something had her by the throat. Her husband cut on the light, and we lost it. Kathy was being held up off her feet. Something had her by the neck. Kathy was choking. We were frozen in place. We were just staring at her. She's being choked by something unseen. We screamed out the name, Jesus Christ, let her go. Kathy fell to the floor. The door slammed upstairs. We ran out the front door. Kathy's husband grabbed her. We all stood on the lawn in front of the house. We called the police and huddled together. The neighbors came out to see all of us standing in the front of the home, crying, shaking. The neighbors whispered among themselves. Finally, I asked one of the neighbors to please tell us why they did not come to our house. A woman came forward. She said her name was Gwen. Gwen said a long time ago, a woman and her family lived in that house. The woman used to practice rituals so that her husband could get money and fame. Soon they started having lots of money, but something happened. Gwen says she thinks the woman had to pay a price for the wealth that she got. Everyone heard her screaming, so they went to the house. They entered the hallway leading to the dining room. They saw that woman hanging in the air, but there was no rope holding her. She tried to talk, but something was choking her. On the floor below her were drawings that she used to call up spirits. Something bad must have happened to her, Gwen said. That woman fell to the floor. She was dead. Everyone ran from the room. Since then, Gwen said, no neighbor would go into that house, our home. My family and I moved. From that house, that very next day, we never came back. My friend Kathy went mad. We never saw her again. But we heard the doctors as they were treating her. She kept screaming. The ghost was killing her. The house is still open for anyone to buy. But no one will. Hey, that was scary, wasn't it? What was it that Frederica and her family encountered in that home in Augsburg, Germany? Was it a spirit that a woman called up? An evil spirit? That's what Frederica believed. Speaking about ghosts and evil spirits, one source for supernatural entities is the Bible. The Bible presents ghosts, evil spirits, and demons. For example, Saul went to the witch of Endor to speak to a dead prophet, Samuel. The witch of Endor called Samuel's spirit up from the grave. Samuel prophesied that Saul and his sons would die the next day. The next day, Saul and his sons were killed in battle with the Philistines. In this show, Doc Moore's Collection of Horror, I'll have more excerpts from all types of literature and from my book that I wrote called Doc Moore's Collection of Horror Stories. Stories of the supernatural, paranormal, and the macabre from around the world. And this book is available at Amazon Prime bookstores. I also include stories that I collect from my work with my ghost hunter group, the Detroit Black Ghost Hunters. And I have more stories coming from that research as well. And one more thing, I do literature searches and literature reviews, including the Bible, to illustrate the connection between interviews and the stories and the literature. This next story I got in an interview while I was in New Delhi, India. Mochi and his wife told me about a foul entity that attacked him when he was coming home from work. Mochi said, this story is about the angry ghost, railway ghost. I was working in New Delhi, and I had to use the railway to get to and from home from work. One night as I was coming home, I noticed a shadow next to one of the ticket stations. I didn't think anything of it. I went up and paid my ticket and went through the turnstile onto the platform. It was very late, so there were very few other passengers waiting for the last train. I did notice that down the platform, the same shadow-looking person leaned against the pillar. I thought to myself, that was strange. Still, I paid no attention to the new line. I lit a cigarette and waited for the train, which would be coming in less than 10 minutes. I started to think about stories of people getting pushed in front of the train, and some of those people were killed. I shuddered, just thinking of what happened, and I thought of that happening to me. I looked at my watch. I looked up, the shadow figure moved. It looked like it moved to a pillar close to where I was standing. I began to get nervous. I wanted to put more space between myself and the shadow person. I remember that a person was killed on the same platform a few weeks ago. That person was pushed in from the train by someone, but nobody knew who it was. I told myself that was just my nerves, that no one was there. I looked at my watch. I had 5 minutes to go before the next train arrived. I lit another cigarette. I looked up the platform. The shadow man had moved to a pillar very close to me. I spoke out, "Who was there?" I pulled out my phone. I looked at my phone. I was in shock. My battery was very, very low, almost dead. I had just charged it before I left the office. The hairs on my neck and my arms were standing straight up. I looked at my watch. 2 minutes. I could see the light of the train as it came around the bend in the track. Soon I would be on a train and all this would be behind me. I swore that tomorrow night I was leaving work earlier so I wouldn't be alone on the tracks. 1 minute left. I turned to look for the Shadow Man. He was standing right behind me. I saw his red eyes and the whites of his teeth and his obscene grinning face. I stumbled back towards the track. The train was pulling into the station. I almost fell into the tracks. The Shadow Man pushed me. I started screaming. A passenger grabbed my arm and pulled me back from the edge of the track. We both felt the heat of the train as it slowed down. Besides us, we both saw the Shadow Man slowly edge back into the darkness of the platform. The passenger who grabbed me said the same thing happened to him last week. There were some paranormal incidents being reported, but the authorities did not believe anyone. It was bad for business, he said. We both got on the train. I told my wife about the incident with the Shadow Man. She looked up the location where I was attacked. The newspaper had articles that told about people getting attacked by an unknown person. The ones who lived said the person that attacked them had red, bloody eyes and smelled very foul, like he was dead. I swore I would never catch that train again. The next day, my wife and I bought a small car. Now that is frightening. Mochi changed his whole travel plan going to from work. He bought a car because something unseen, something foul tried to kill him. He said it was evil, foul. What do you think? Can you blame Mokti for not riding the train anymore? He had a supernatural experience that greatly affected him. Well, we've come to the end of episode number 2. And I appreciate all of you listeners out there. Please feel free to provide feedback and comments. Thanks for sending in your stories and for sharing your paranormal experiences. Join me next time as I bring you more interviews and ghost stories from people just like you. And I also bring you excerpts from literature, including the Bible, that run parallel to the stories and the interviews that we discuss and bring forth in this show. We've been talking about ghosts and paranormal evidence, activities, actions, attacks on people. If you have something to share, feel free to send it in to me. If you want to share your stories with me, feel free to contact me at my website or my email and send your ghost stories to DocMooreCollectionHorror at hotmail.com. That's DocMooreCollectionHorror at hotmail.com. And you can also click on the websites. You can click on the web address, then the links. And please click on subscribe so that I can keep bringing you these stories of the supernatural, the paranormal, and the macabre. And our next time we talk, we'll talk about ghosts in Japan and some in Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, Kamzama, Japan, and some other places. And in the future, we'll talk about all kind of ghost stories from all over the world, from people from all over the world. Until next time, that noise in the dark, that bump in the night, is it real? Is it true? You be the judge. You've been listening to Doc Moore's collection of horror stories with your host, Stephen B. Moore, Doc Moore Sr. Join us next time as Doc Moore brings more stories from interviews about supernatural ghosts, evil spirits, haunted residences, seances, Ouija boards, and other worldly occurrences. Please click the subscribe button. We can continue to bring you stories that frighten and shock you. Until the next time.